We live in a failed state.
Our politics is beyond broken. It is broken on both sides, Republican and Democrat.
There's a division in this country today, and it's the biggest it's ever been.
So when people say that America is failing because of one corrupt president, they're completely missing the bigger picture here. America is not failing because of one corrupt president. America is failing because our entire system is corrupt. We've had 40 years of failed trickle-down economics for the working class and 40 years of bailouts, tax breaks, subsidies, and socialism for giant corporations in the ruling class. America is failing for the simple fact that we live in an oligarchy where both parties serve the ruling class. And we won't save this nation by just changing our corrupt president. We have to do so much more than that. We have to actually change our corrupt system and our policies, which are rigged to favor the ruling class.
This is a failed state. The richest country in the world, a failed state. It cannot provide basic services. The definition of a failed state is a country, a government that becomes incapable of providing for its citizens on a fundamental level, meeting basic human needs.
The system has failed. The system has collapsed. We're in an economic crisis. We're in a climate crisis. We're in a healthcare crisis. The current failed system has a noose around all of our necks, and we need to save ourselves.
What we're doing in America isn't working. America is not working. It's time to draw a line. This far and no further.
You know, people say, oh, the system's broken. Here we realize, no, the system's working. The system's working the way it's supposed to. It's working the way it's supposed to for the donor class and for Wall Street.
How can we have peace when you got 12 folks who are on the precipice of controlling $1 trillion?
When you're living in survival all the time, you don't know, you're living in chronic economic tension. You don't know how you're going to pay off your college loans. You don't know what'll happen if you ever get sick. You don't know how you'll ever send your kids to college. Nobody can live freely. Everybody's in such tension and anxiety. There's a reason for that. And as has been said here before, I'll tell you why. Because of policies, because of a rigged system that is built at this point. Because of the undue influence of corporate money on our government has become a system of legalized bribery. It is basically a handmaiden to those corporate forces. And it's not going to stop it until we stop it.
Those same forces, which robbed us of any real representation, will continue to oppress not only every working American, but every working family in this world.
We need a third party because they have two parties already. The oligarchs and the corporations already have two parties that take care of them. We need a party to take care of us.
I'm sure you've all noticed that the two-party system is not working for everybody. In fact, it's only working for corporate America and the wealthy elites. Big business doesn't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, because big business knows that leaders of both parties are working to enhance the corporate agenda rather than the agenda of the people. It's naive to believe that our elected officials will fight for Medicare for all when their donors are health insurers. It's foolish to believe that our elected officials care about housing justice when their donors are real estate developers. And it's incomprehensible that our elected officials will keep us out of war when their donors are weapons makers and principals of the military-industrial complex.
We need a party that is built from truth-telling, from the struggles of the working class, not a party that accepts money from the industries that profit from our oppression.
John Adams, one of our forefathers of the country, warned us, I believe it was Adams, when he said, when political parties take over the government, when they become so powerful, that will be the end of the United States as we know it. Well, people, don't you think we're kind of there right now? The two political parties have really taken over. And I like to refer to them as really the one political party. They're the corporate party.
Only one thing matters to the oligarchs. It is not democracy. It is not truth. It is not the consent of the governed. It is not income inequality. It is not the surveillance state. It is not endless war. It is not jobs. It is not the climate breakdown. It is the primacy of corporate power, which has extinguished our democracy and left most of the working class and the working poor in misery, as well as the continued increase and consolidation of their wealth.
We are seeing an immoral and rigged economy where billionaires like Jeff Bezos make $13 billion in a single day while working people struggle to build any real wealth.
Look, today we're all here for the same reason. We're fighting for a better world and we demand change. For far too long, Americans have been told that we cannot afford basic necessities such as healthcare and education. Meanwhile, our criminal and corrupt government has stolen our hard-earned tax dollars to enrich themselves and the corporate elite billionaires that run our country.
As for the corporate parties that we have, Bernie Sanders taught us that there is no such thing as a candidate or a party, a people's candidate or a people's party that takes corporate money. It's an oxymoron. You cannot serve the Wall Street oligarchs and Wall Street and corporations and the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex and big oil and big ag and the people.
12 billionaires in this country have accumulated over $1 trillion of wealth during the course of this pandemic.
Ending corporate rule is foundational to making real the promise of democracy, a promise that has never fully been fulfilled in the United States and whose blessings are less attainable with every minute that Republicans or the Democratic Party hold power. Our Constitution has been hijacked by corporations. Whenever a local community or state is able to organize its people to fight back and to pass a law or measure to try to rein in corporate power, whether over our food, our health, our safety, our wages, our environment, or our elections, giant corporations hold the ultimate trump card in that they can sue our government, in effect sue we the people, and get the courts to strip away our efforts at self-government over our economic institutions. What does this look like? This looks like Monsanto suing the state of California because they don't want to have to label that Roundup causes cancer. So they claim that my state's labeling laws violate their constitutional rights and winning because the courts uphold their rights over those of we the people. Or it looks like coal companies suing states and using the argument that environmental regulations are a takings of property under the Fifth Amendment so that our communities, already strapped for cash, are forced to pay for the profits coal companies would have made if we want to keep protecting our public and our environmental health. Or it looks like states trying to protect their local businesses who are up against the Walmarts of the world, but instead the Supreme Court has stripped communities of the freedom to decide which businesses to foster by using the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause on behalf of multinational corporations. The 14th Amendment was intended to ensure equal protection for African Americans after slavery. All of these examples are real cases that are happening right now or that have already happened as part of the court-created doctrine of corporate personhood, which is why we must pass the We the People Amendment to put a stop to this. Until we make clear that only human beings have constitutional rights, companies will continue to win against us in court because our legal system prioritizes corporate rights over human rights. And democracy is impossible under these conditions.
And the numbers tell the story here. The numbers don't lie. Over the past 30 years, the top 1% gained $21 trillion in wealth, while the bottom 50% lost a staggering $900 billion in wealth. And this massive wealth transfer didn't happen because the 1% worked harder than the bottom 50%. It happened because both corporate parties are owned by the 1% and passed laws that favor the ruling class and exploit the working class. It happened because they rigged the system against us. And now it's time for us to unrig it by breaking the duopoly and building a party that serves the needs of the American people. Because the simple truth is this, that we are all losing under the duopoly. Democrats, leftists, independents, and yes, even Republicans all deserve a better nation than this. And if we just step back and think about it in simplistic terms, How are we ever going to solve these systemic problems facing the nation when both parties are bought and paid for by the very corporations who profit off of these systemic problems? For example, how are we going to solve the climate crisis when both parties are in the pockets of the fossil fuel industry? How are we ever going to stop the racial injustice crisis when both parties are in the pockets of the for-profit prison industry? How are we ever going to stop the cost of healthcare crisis and the lack of healthcare crisis when both parties are in the pockets of big pharma and the giant insurance companies? How are we ever going to stop the economic inequality crisis when both parties are in the pockets of the billionaire class? The obvious answer to every single one of those questions is we won't. Nothing, and I repeat, nothing will fundamentally change in this country as long as corporate greed rules Washington. The only way to build a better America is by coming together and building a new major progressive party that is free of corporate money and free of corporate influence.
When I was governor, I brought the third party people together to try to get them under one roof. And unfortunately, it was like herding cats. But I did find out what we had in common. And here's what we had in common. We didn't take the dirty money. That's what all the third parties pretty much have in common. We're not dirty with the PAC money and the dirty corporate money. The other two parties are. And always remember this. The two major parties today, they put their party before the country. You see that constantly. Protect the political party, the party's power. They aren't necessarily doing what's best for the people of America. That's number one on their priority. Number two, the donors, the money people, the people that keep them in power, the people that pave the way. They're the ones that get the tax cuts. They're the ones that get the money bailouts when our economy tanks. So naturally, they're the second ones fixed or taken care of. Then finally with them, it's their own personal view, whatever they may feel personally about an issue. And we, the people, might be fourth. But something else could sneak in there. We very well could be fifth for all that I don't know everything.
We are in the middle of a conflict, an undeclared war of the billionaire class, their surrogates, their mercenaries, their assets, willing and unwitting. It's them versus the people. And we don't have any more time to sit on the sidelines. This is calling for our action right now. And I want to let you know from the Pine Ridge Reservation that we are standing with all of the people in America.
As you know, the richest man in the world is on pace to be the first trillionaire in history. This is not something that we should be praising. This is something that we should be very aware of, scared of, because these billionaires do not represent this country at all. They put profits above people. People have died to accumulate their wealth for them, and they are not taking care of the Black community, the brown community, the indigenous communities, the immigrants communities at all. We all need to take this moment in time, as COVID-19 is still here. We need to take this moment in time to fight back.
We have to stand up and stop accepting our future being determined by a greedy minority whose only agenda is gobbling up everything for themselves.
Neither one of these parties are dealing with the real material concerns of this population. Both of these parties have realized that basically, because there's only two, both can be captured by corporate class, and both can have somewhat of a similar interest powered by the people who are basically putting money in their pocket, sliding credit cards through their butt cheeks.
Both corporate parties in Washington are doing what they do best, putting their corporate donors over the basic needs of the American people. And we need to be very clear about this, because one of the corporate parties likes to sedate us with platitudes of hope and change. But make no mistake, they are bought and paid for by the very same corporations and oligarchs as the other corporate party in Washington. And progressive giant Henry Wallace warned us about this all the way back in 1948. That is how long this fight has been going on. When he said, and I quote, Both parties are the champions of big business. The Republican Party admits it. The Democratic Party attempts to conceal it. And here we are 72 years later, and both corporate parties in Washington are still putting corporate interests over human interests.
What the people want is simple. They want an America as good as its promise. That is what the people's movement is all about.
Yes, we need new radical parties, which is why I'm here today.
Then you organize now behind a party that is based its entire platform strictly on the issues rather than personality. See, the People's Party has been different in that regard if you haven't noticed. There's no personality to get behind. There's no cult of a personality to get behind. The only cult that you can join is a cult of the issues.
True progress for the people cannot be achieved until we form our own party.
So for everyone out there who's looking for a new home, looking for a place where we don't care about Citizens United or corporate personhood.
So it's time for us to fight back and build a party that is of, by, and for the people.
So when it comes time for people like me in this generation, and I am so proud and honored to be here, and you see there's people from all walks of life, comedians, actors, politicals, scientists, professors, because that's what it is. This is a movement. This is a movement saying that the people have had enough. You don't have to be Republican to like this movement. You don't have to be Democrat to like this movement. All you have to be is a person that is willing to say that I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. I am this earth's steward, because we did not inherit this earth from our ancestors. We're borrowing it from future generations. And if we want it to look like anything for our children and grandchildren,
we will be founding a major new party to take on the corruption of the Democratic and Republican establishments. And we will be creating a party that actually represents working class and middle class Americans, not just corporate interests and billionaires.
Perhaps the idea of building a party, building a people's party from the bottom up, and I think it has to be from the bottom up, to talk about, to support the issues and support the struggles of workers, unions, nurses, teachers, and everything else. We have to really talk about fundamentally about education and education as a constitutional right. Quality education is a constitutional right. We have to really talk about so many different things that are left off the platform, but we know that all these issues reside in certainly creating the kind of party, creating the kind of will, and building that kind of will that's necessary for us for the future to deal with climate change.
So we need a party, we need a political system that is not beholden to them, that is independent, that doesn't take corporate money and does what the people want and does what the planet needs and not what the corporations want.
To hell with the two-party system. To hell with poverty and the daily fear of it. And to hell with non-universal health care.
Why do we start a new party? We start a new party because the Democratic Party pretends to like us, pretends that we're good for their votes, or we're good. We're the people that they want to support, that they have our backs. Meanwhile, they don't pass any policies that actually help our communities. They support policies that take resources out of our communities, and all it is lip service. Why do we need a new party? Because the Republican Party is even worse than that. That's the reason why we need a new party, because we realize that the corporations own this one. This one's been bought and sold. The Democratic Party has been bought and sold. We need a new party because it's time working people, Black people, Hispanic people, all people get a fair shot. We've never gotten a fair shot. It's time we get a fair shot. We need a new party because we have children. We care about them. We have grandchildren. We have aging parents. We have neighbors. We have people all over the globe who are suffering under the regime change wars. We need a new party because we know the parties that we have in place now are not going to fix that. We will all die on this planet, become obsolete if it's left up to them. They're polishing the brass on a sinking ship. Don't do it. Don't be a part of it. Stand against it. As Dr. Cornel West says, it's all about what you do before the worms get you.
Too many people are afraid. Too many people are stressed the hell out. And it didn't just get this way because of who's in the White House. It's been this way.
The Republican Party has been so taken over by a corporatist agenda, they don't even pretend that they're not. But the Democratic Party is very interesting, isn't it? It sees all the suffering that is created by a corporatist agenda, and it does, in ways that it can, try to ameliorate the suffering on the periphery. But neither the Democratic Party, any more than the Republican Party, will actually challenge the underlying forces that make all that suffering inevitable.
In which the anthem is lift every voice, not the echoes of the neo-fascist wing of the ruling class, the Republican Party, the neoliberal ruling class, neoliberal wing of the ruling class, the Democratic Party. No, that's the echo chamber. That's what we saw in those conventions with their talking points, with their superficial spectacle.
In America, we've got one party of oligarchy, one party of inequality. We have one party of war. The Republicans, incoherent, dangerous. They are not a solution. The Democrats, with their self-righteousness, their repulsive combination of class privilege and moral posturing, pretending to be the party of working people while selling them out to the predators of working people and the middle class. They are not a solution.
He misread the Democratic Party itself, which is a corporate mirage. Its base can, at best, select pre-approved candidates and act as props at rallies and in choreographed party conventions. The Democratic Party voters have zero influence on party politics or party policies.
The Democratic and Republican parties have been taken over by corruption, greed, and big money corporate interests. They have taken Americans hostage and have used fear to win our votes while squashing dissent. The corrupt criminals that are currently in office have sought to take everything from us. They've sought to take our dignity, our ability to put food on the table, the safety of knowing we have a roof over our heads, the chance to get an education without going into debt. Hell, we can't even get sick.
And I say this as a Native American, as an American Indian, on whom citizenship was imposed, American citizenship was imposed in 1924. We went, fought, and died for this country. This world's greatest experiment, as Brother Cornel West says, we went and fought and died for this country. And so now we're at a point, if you remember at Standing Rock, the no DAPL struggle, this is when I ran for the United States Congress. Right after I lost to a Trump surrogate in 2016, I joined the front lines at the battle for Standing Rock. And there we were able to witness unarmed water protectors, unarmed protesters who were trying to defend all of our rights to free speech, our rights to peaceably assemble, our rights to be free from illegal searches and seizures. We were trying to defend all of America's constitutional, natural, human, and civil rights, not to mention the treaty rights of the original civilizers of this entire hemisphere. And when that was going down, the world was able to witness corporate-sponsored state violence, brutality that maimed some of our supporters for like the same brutality that's being executed on the streets of liberal or democratic cities.
But once again, last time I checked, there was a Democratic president during Standing Rock, during Ferguson, during Baltimore, during Flint.
The Republicans are one of the greatest existential threats to mankind, to paraphrase Noam Chomsky. I believe that to be true. And the only way they're able to be this horrible is because of how ineffective the Democrats are, and vice versa. They need each other, and that's bipartisanship. It takes a Republican wing and a Democrat wing for the American eagle to fly. so it can shit on all of our heads.
Both parties are clearly beholden to the fossil fuel industry. It's as simple as that. Both parties take donations. One party certainly is in hard denial. They actually say this is a hoax, which is just makes my head explode. But the other party also takes donations. The other party also participates in the revolving door. They have campaign advisors who are lobbyists for the fossil fuel industry, for fracking, and for the oil industry. It's crazy. Just recently, the DNC said that they would not end fossil fuel subsidies, which is a complete no-brainer. This huge billion, even by some estimates, trillion globally dollar handouts to the wealthiest industry, one of the wealthiest industries the planet's ever known. It's a no-brainer to stop that. And the Democratic Party can't even say that they're going to stop fossil fuel subsidies, let alone do the Green New Deal that we need. So it's clear to me that the fossil fuel industry will keep fighting dirty. When their survival is at stake, because we need to shut them down with policies, they will fight 10 times as hard as they ever have. They'll continue buying off politicians, and they'll continue misinforming the line.
We're in an abusive relationship with our two-party system. The Democratic Party plays good cop, while the Republican Party plays bad cop.
The audacity of both parties in this country to tell women when they can and cannot use their constitutional rights over their body. And when I say that, it's because Democrats spend more money on wars than Planned Parenthood. The audacity of both parties in this country to tell Black people that you should go to jail for longer. And I say that because Democrats also fund private prisons and they fund the police state. The audacity of both parties in this country to say we cannot avoid universal health care when Democrats and Republicans both fund our war machine.
Neither party offered anything. Neither party wants to defund the police. Neither party wants to address climate change. The Republicans don't even think it exists. The Democrats just, we're going to green up our military. Yes, I'm sure the people in the Middle East are going to be ecstatic knowing that they're getting bombed by rockets powered by biodiesel. It's ridiculous to listen to both parties. None of them want Medicare for all. None of them want to get money out of politics. And we're constantly stuck with this lesser of two evils thing. That's all they tell us, the lesser of two evils. Nowhere else in American society would anybody accept this. Politics affects every aspect of our daily lives. You're watching this on the internet, your internet provider, there's a tax, there's legislation. That's politics. It affects everything. Did you buy something today? You paid a sales tax. That's politics. And yet this thing that affects every area of our life, we're only given the lesser of two evils. Nowhere else would Americans accept this. Can you imagine if advertisers were like, the all-new Chevy Malibu, just not as crappy as the Ford Taurus? There's no way we would accept that.
This is the kind of moment we live in. This is why this movement for People's Party is so fundamentally crucial.
Republicans and Democrats only care about short-term profits and short-term solutions. Democrats and Republicans are going to give us a short-term future. The establishment wants to go back. They want voters to go back to sleep, to trade one nightmare for another nightmare.
Do you realize we dragged Medicare for All over the burning corpse of 20 Democrats, all of them taking their shots, all of them doing whatever they can to poke holes in that policy, and we win 88% support in the context of a party. And we're not even talking about the rest of the population with 69% support. If you can't get that over the finish line with Biden, Pelosi, Schumer telling you to kick rocks, you can get nothing over the finish line regarding policy that you want. The only move, the only strategy is to leave and to stand under the banner of policy and make a demand. You get our vote when you represent our interests.
The Democrats' pragmatic centrism. Joe Biden has said now's not the time for revolution. That's right. Revolutions always happen when things are going great. Hey guys, when there's a vaccine and the economy's back to normal and everybody's got a job and the cops aren't out of control and we're not bombing 7 countries, then we'll start the revolution. That's when it starts, when everything's going great.
This isn't voting for the lesser of two evils. It's just basically choosing to vote for evil. And we have to say no more, well, we vote for evil. Instead, we will fight for the issues.
And if these candidates like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do not represent us, We're putting them on notice starting today with this People's Party movement. I'm letting it be known. I had 9 senators sign a letter on my behalf to Jeff Bezos. 9 of them. Kamala Harris was one of them. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker. I'm saying to all of you that wrote a letter on my behalf, and not just my behalf, to all the workers that were exploited during these times, we need you guys to take action if you're really representing the power of the people, or if you're trying to represent a message to your constituents that stands in solidarity with the working class people. Enough is enough. I think the younger generation, and myself included, are tired of the Democratic Party doing a lot of lip service and not enough action. So we're looking for a new way out, and the third party may be the way to go. And I believe this is the foundation, and this coalition that we formed here today with these speakers and stories will be the way of the future.
The Democratic Party still couldn't bring itself to acknowledge the need for life-saving Medicare for all. The DNC Platform Committee voted down Medicare for all. Then, during the Democratic Convention, while a parade of Republicans got to speak on the DNC broadcast, Bernie delegates would type in the Zoom chat of DNC meetings that we need Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, found themselves blocked from posting the rest of the meeting. That was the level of pettiness the DNC went to silence any mention of Medicare for all. I could cite other examples, but I'd run out of time. To sum up, in my lifetime in this country, I've seen no evidence the Democratic Party will deliver Medicare for all on its own. We need massive, massive pressure from the outside. One way to do that is through an anti-oligarchy People's Party.
But independents and progressives no longer have to settle for less.
We need a party that's not in the clutches of the military-industrial complex, of the military contractors, a party that can push our foreign policy in a radically new direction. What are some of those things that we do? Well, we would give our total support to the UN Secretary General, who insists that during the midst of a global pandemic, we must have a global ceasefire. As he said, the fury of the pandemic illustrates the folly of war. We would also push our country to support the global grassroots movement from the bottom up to create a UN ban on nuclear weapons. This movement was so inspiring that it won the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's been supported by 44 countries. It needs 50 countries to go into effect. Our country should be one of them. We would also save $1.3 trillion that both parties have allocated to, quote, modernize our nuclear weapons. We do not need more modern nuclear weapons. We need an end to nuclear weapons.
We can't just vote for different leaders. We have to change how we vote. And voting has to exist upon a foundation of fundamental human rights. We all have a right to life. That is a fundamental human right, but we've never truly recognized it. No one really has the right to life so long as someone else can withhold what's needed to live. Within a monetary system of private property, money is oxygen, so we all have an unconditional right to enough money to live. That is why I believe the most important structural change of all is an unconditional basic income floor, where every American would start every month above the poverty line and never fall below it.
Many of the other speakers have brought up the issue of the Pentagon budget. This is something that we need a party that will get seriously to work at taking on this grotesque, distorted budget, more than the next 10 countries combined, a budget that robs us of the pot of gold that we need for healthcare, free college education, Green New Deal, and on and on.
We need more than UBI. An unconditional right to life is not the ultimate goal of a just society. It is the prerequisite to a just society.
We need a party that would stop the Democrats and Republicans from trying to take us into new wars. Now, with two major powers, two nuclear powers, and I'm talking about Russia and China. Both parties are vying during their campaigns to see which one can be tougher on Russia and on China. This is extremely dangerous, and we have to shout out loud and clear, China and Russia are not our enemies. We refuse to be taken down that path. You know, it's interesting because on one level, both parties understand that war is not popular with the American people. And that's why they've been mouthing the platitudes that they will get out of these Middle East wars. But both of the parties have kept us mired in these wars for over 20 years. We need a party that won't talk about bringing our troops home, but will do it. We need a party that says, hell no, we won't continue to give $3.8 billion of our tax dollars to the apartheid state of Israel and will instead support Palestinian rights.
We also need healthcare as a right. No one should ever be dependent on their jobs for life-sustaining income or life-saving medical care. The right to breathe is not an employee benefit. It is inalienable. We need Medicare for all, and we need basic income for all. No conditions, no means testing, no but what abouts. Survival, guaranteed for life, so that life can be about everything beyond survival instead of an endless pursuit of survival.
We need a party that says, hell no, we won't keep selling weapons to grotesque human rights abusers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and we won't support the horrific war in Yemen. We need a party that says, hell yes, we'll re-enter the Iran nuclear deal and work with all the countries in the region to find an end to the violence that has destroyed so many lives.
To change the structure requires mass local activism. Every state is in charge of how they vote. Maine was the first to break free by adopting ranked choice voting. Alaska and Massachusetts may be next. Every state must follow in order to end the spoiler effect and move from plurality to majority voting. Gerrymandering must end too. Politicians must be prohibited from choosing their voters. At the very least, we need third-party fair redistricting, but even better, multi-member districts utilizing proportional representation.
And here, closer to home, we need a party that understands the devastating effects that U.S. policies have had in Latin America and the Caribbean, including policies that have forced people to flee their homes to seek asylum here. We need a party that will bury once and for all the Monroe Doctrine based on interference and regime change, like this administration has been trying to do with Venezuela, and will instead initiate a new good neighbor policy grounded in the principle of non-intervention.
We also need publicly financed elections where every American is allotted an amount of funding to donate to political campaigns so that lobbyists are overpowered by the power of the people.
There's no way out in a political sense for this. The only way out is to extricate yourself from the political party, stand under the banner of policy.
It's also so wonderful to be among a group of people who understand why we need an alternative to the war parties, to the parties that kill and maim and displace millions of people around the world with no accountability, no remorse, and no lessons learned.
Why do we need to elect a third-party president? Here is why. The polarization is going to continue and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. The only way out is to give them a common enemy, and that's what the third party does. They fear the third party more than anything else, and guess who knows that from experience? You're looking at him. I got elected governor of Minnesota. I had a Democratic-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled House, much the same as you see nationally today. Now, for the first 3 years, whoever I sided with generally prevailed. But then we got to year 3. I submitted my budget, which I'm required to do. The Democrats and Republicans got in bed together. They discarded my budget. They came back with one of their own. I vetoed it twice. They overrode my veto twice. Subsequently, using the people of Minnesota for political pawns, their budget didn't work. I had left office, and guess what? Minnesota had a $5 billion deficit because they put their party politics and party power before the good people of Minnesota. The pecking order was them first, the Minnesota people second. And there's a great example of it. Now, nationally, that's what you need to have happen. You must give them a common enemy those two parties, they fear the third party movement more than anything else. And they eventually will jump in bed together and they'll be singing Kumbaya by the fireside. And you'll think, how did this happen? Well, it happened because a third entity entered the game. And that's what we need to have happen in America. A third or even a fourth entity should be entering the game now. We're too diverse. I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal. Who do I fit in with? I believe in less government. There's a lot of places I think government could be reduced. But I also believe in social issues. I don't think it's the government's business what your sexual preference is. I don't think it's their business. End the war on drugs. It's been a disaster. And, there's all sorts of things like that can happen if we break the cycle of the Democrats and Republicans. But that's what you have to do. You have to break the cycle.
Now, if you look at the great social justice movements in our history, such as abolition, such as women's suffrage, third parties were extremely important. Abolition did not emerge from a major party, it emerged from the abolitionist party. Women's suffrage did not emerge from a major political party, it emerged from the Women's Party. Social Security did not emerge from a major party, it emerged from the Socialist Party.
See, that's why you got a variety here tonight of people who have different views on how to move this nation forward. What we do agree on is that we are in a fight for our lives and for future generations.
It is impossible to work within the system to shatter the hegemony of oligarchic power or institute meaningful reform. Change, real change, will only come by sustained acts of mass civil disobedience and mobilization, as with the Yellow Vest movement in France and the British-based Extinction Rebellion. The longer we are fooled by the electoral burlesque, the more disempowered we will become.
As a Cuban immigrant, I have always felt a special responsibility towards protecting our democracy. When I was 7 years old, my mother and I fled the Castro regime, and we came to the US on a visa. We struggled, and there were times that I could not see the light at the end of the tunnel. And yet we're still here today standing strong. As Latinos, we've been shamed into silence. We're so grateful to be here that we don't speak up. And we are always scared of the persecution that we see both in our brown and Black communities. Today, our silence ends. You see, we are all Americans, and it is our responsibility to fight for our country, to tear down the corrupt system that has oppressed us for so long, and to build a future of equality that we can actually be proud of.
And we're here to say it's time to end the duopoly. We're here to say that it's not radical to demand the type of healthcare system the rest of the industrialized world takes for granted. It's not radical to say we need to act bold on climate change now with a Green New Deal and it can't wait. It's not radical to say anybody working 40 hours a week at an honest job deserves a living wage. It's not radical to say we need to look out for the most vulnerable among us. It's not radical to say that education should be for everyone and not just for the elite. And it's certainly not radical to say it is time to end the wars and end them now.
It's time to disband the dysfunctional two-party system that perpetuates greed and corporate influence in American politics.
You cannot fix something that was built to be broken. We have to shatter the systems that oppress us and rebuild everything for all of us.
But to accomplish and preserve these pillars of a just society, we also need a functioning government. We need to save, restore, and expand our democracy. We never should have allowed a two-party system. Duopoly is not democracy.
And listen, brothers and sisters, we're going to win some and we're going to lose some. But people going to know this, that we are in this fight.
So now is the time for us to stand up. And I understand that it's a monumental task. It really, truly is. But so was dismantling slavery, a system that had existed for 200 plus years. It's a monumental task. But so was dismantling Jim Crow, a system that had existed for almost 100 years. It's a monumental task. But guess what? We're up to the task. We're up to doing it.
We need alternatives. We need alternative media. We need alternative energy. And we need alternative politics. But Jimmy, you'll be going up against the big political parties. Big banks, big oil, big pharma. Let's get away from big. Let's realize that we are only big when we come together and acknowledge our smallness, stand in solidarity with each other. That's when we're big. We are up against Democrats and Republicans.
We are stepping into the unknown. So what?
Today, we take our country back.
You know, all of us here, they're going to call all of us crazy just because we want a better future. They tell themselves that we are crazy because they are in denial about how crazy things have actually gotten.
It is time for the people to rise up, take our power back. It is time for the people to ask themselves, what kind of nation do we want to be? Do we want to continue to be a feudal nation, a plutocratic nation where just 2 billionaires now hoard more wealth than half of our country's entire population? Or do we want to be a free nation, a democratic nation where our economy actually values and pays its workers a living wage and where everybody has guaranteed health care?
We're on the precipice as a country and as a species. The America that we have known is a failure, and nearly everything needs to change. And we know this in our hearts. We have so much work before us, but we can do it because we have to. Let's embrace new visions that draw on old wisdom and bury the structures of oppression and exploitation that entrench the Democratic and Republican parties and the forces that own them. I'm so very honored to be here with you to start this party, and I can't wait to see what we'll accomplish.
But we are here today to say it is time to end the duopoly, and we cannot settle for less. And the time is now, because if not now, when? Because at the end of the day, my friends, there is nothing pragmatic about an incremental solution to a catastrophic problem.
We as a people must focus on who and what we are fighting for and fighting against. We are fighting against corruption, against greed, against an oligarchic society. We are fighting for good, a common morality to help others so they can help many more. The freedom to serve others how you feel you are best capable isn't what universal basic income means. But to me, that's what it means to be an American. Not the decadence of neoliberalism, nor the lesser of two evils. America is great not because we've always been good, but because we've always striven to be better.
It's we, the people, that hold the power, and the elite are doing everything they can to make sure that we don't realize that.
We must work to become a majority party. And until we get there, we must be large enough that any party that wants to win must form a coalition with us, by which they concede to our demands and not the other way around. They are going to concede to the majority of Americans and the policies we want, or they are going to lose.
So we come together in the spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. We stand together.
And so when it came to abolition, people knew it was simply time for the people to take it from here. When it came to women's suffrage, it was women who knew, no, we're going to have to step in. When it came to civil rights, Martin Luther King, civil rights movement, it was time for the people to step in. And one more time, it is time for the people to step in. And that's why this party is important.
But we have to take this moment and do the work that we have to do. To take this moment and understand that if we don't act now, if we don't do something now, we are preparing ourselves in a dark moment than we can ever imagine, a darker moment than we can ever imagine.
A better world is possible, but it's up to us to make it happen. It's up to us to build it. It's up to us to draw that line together and choose to recognize our mutual human rights through the further democratization of power and the decoupling of both survival income and healthcare from employment.
It's time for us, the people, to be audacious. It's time for us to stand up and make our voices heard, to stand up and stiffen our spines and strengthen our resolves and put our backs to the wheel and move this country in the direction that it purports to be.
Because you see, we have nothing to lose. These thieves, these criminals, on the other hand, they have everything to lose. And when you're down, there's nowhere to go but up. This is our moment. The future is ours.
Everyday people ought to have a dignity and decency. The vision of a James Cleveland. Ordinary people ought to have a dignity and decency. But does America have the capacity? We're all wrestling with despair. That's the skeleton in our in our closet. Can we listen to all of our voices, Grace Boggs and others, the best of who we are as a species, as a nation, as an imperial experiment, as an imperial democracy?
Every day we're told we are prisoners of a two-party system. We are not. We do not have to comfort our jailers, and we can free ourselves from this prison. We need to have the courage to fight for the world we want, no matter what we're up against or how long it takes.
As long as we are standing together, there is absolutely nothing we cannot do. This is indeed the movement for you.
A People's Party is the only solution. The People's Party must transform our political system. It must. The People's Party must rejuvenate our democracy that has already been stolen from us.
What a time to be alive, pandemic and all. And yet, here comes the People's Party.
This is something that reminds me of the greatest social movements in the history of this country.
My name is Omar Fernandez. I am the president of the American Postal Workers Union of Vermont, and I also am the vice president of the Postal Workers of Vermont for the AFL-CIO. And I've been frustrated that both parties are not doing what they need to do to take care of the Postal Service. And absolutely, the American Postal Workers Union of Vermont endorses the movement for a People's Party.
I am so proud to support the movement for a People's Party, and I cannot wait to see the people rise up. Please join the movement and demand more of our government.
The People's Party is a platform that allows you to state your political case, to function and push for your political objectives.
If you are fed up with our two-party corporate system that is backed by the same oligarchs and the same fascist movement, if you are tired, then I implore you to stand up and join a People's Party.
So I look forward to working with you all to build a new party that understands and promotes international solidarity and is determined to live in peace and cooperation.
This is our time. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight for the poor and the working class. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight for racial justice and economic justice and environmental justice. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight to raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight for Medicare for all to save our people and a Green New Deal to save our planet. It is our moment to build a party that will fight for universal public college, trade, and tech schools so that workers have the tools to compete in this 21st century economy. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight to cut the Pentagon budget in half and finally end these endless wars. And it is our moment to build a party that will fight to defeat the duopoly in 2024 and free this nation from corporate rule. So I hope my message today is clear. It is time for the people to rise up, take our power back. It is time for the people to ask themselves, what kind of nation do we want to be? Do we want to continue to be a feudal nation, a plutocratic nation where just 2 billionaires now hoard more wealth than half of our country's entire population? Or do we want to be a free nation, a democratic nation where our economy actually values and pays its workers a living wage and where everybody has guaranteed health care? It is clear that the corporate parties aren't ready to meet this moment of great struggle with the bold progressive policies that we need to move this nation forward, but the People's Party is. We are ready to take on corporate interests and fight for the people's interests. We are ready to take on Wall Street's interests and fight for Main Street's interests. We are ready to take on the billionaire class's interests and fight for the working class's interests because we believe, and I believe, that every single person in this country has worth and dignity, and it's time that we have a party that represents them and represents the people's interests of this nation. So I encourage you, go to peoplesparty.org right now. Join our fight to unrig this corrupt system.
This movement must win. Millions of working people are counting on us. The future of the nation is counting on us. The future of the human species is counting on us. People's Party.
We have to make our stand. That's why everybody has gathered today to form a People's Party. We can do this. In Mexico, in 2014, progressives got tired of trying to reform their two neoliberal parties. You know what they did? They formed a new party. It was a movement for 2 years, from 2012, and in 2014, it became a new party, Morena. 4 years later, just 2 years ago, 4 years later, in 2018, they elected Andrés Manuel López Obrador, described as the Bernie Sanders of Mexico, as their president. Just recently, he announced he's legalizing marijuana, on top of a whole suite of progressive policies. They took both houses of the national legislature. They took the majority of the governorships, and they took the presidency in 4 years. That's what a political revolution looks like. That's the level of system change that we need in this country. That's what we need to bring. The same thing has happened abroad in other countries. In country after country, particularly Latin America and Europe, we are seeing new parties rise and throw out and replace and seriously contest parties that have been dominant since the end of the Second World War. In Spain, Podemos. In Greece, Syriza. In Chile, Frente Amplio. This is a phenomenon that is sweeping the world. And here in the United States, we need to catch that wave. We cannot be left behind. We can do it. We have advantages that we have never had before as working people. We have the internet. The internet is powering new parties around the world, the ones I spoke of. The organizing model of the Bernie Sanders campaign was likewise a model for a new party. It was a distributed organizing program functioning through apps, social media organizing, Facebook groups. We can do likewise. We are doing likewise right now. As much as they don't want our message to get out, as much as they've tried to clamp down on social media and independent news, so many of the hosts that you've heard from today who get the news out despite trying to be stamped out by YouTube, big corporations, they cannot contain our message. We went number 2 trending today on Twitter. The same thing is true of us being able to get the word out. We can, as I mentioned, circumvent the mainstream media now because we have the internet, because we can communicate peer to peer. We have the ability to get the message across. We're no longer forced to funnel the information that we get from the mainstream media and whatever sources they choose to put in front of us. We now can communicate with each other in a beautiful movement where the people lead what is worth knowing. We're going backwards. Everybody can see it. Everybody knows it. Things are getting worse. They're getting worse with the Democrats and Republicans. Their management of this country is taking us backwards. It is making things worse. We have a responsibility, a solemn responsibility, to make good on this wave that is sweeping the world, this revolution that is sweeping the world, and to join our sisters and brothers in forming a major new political party that is free of corporate money and influence. 4 years from now, I believe that we will be at the People's Convention of 2024 with a presidential candidate poised to win, to defeat both parties like Morena did, both corporate-funded parties, and candidates at all levels, to lead the political revolution that we all sought from the beginning. That is our vision, and it is a vision that has never been more real and more necessary than it is today.
We've constantly been told what we can and what we can't do. We've been told what's realistic, feasible, and practical. We've been told what we're capable of. I just want to take this moment to say thank you to all of my young organizers out there. Thank you for fanning your spark into a flame and for caring enough about what's happening in the world and not caring one bit about who says what we can do. This persistence and this resilience is so ineffably imperative, and I really love that about us. My absolute favorite thing is not just our determination, but how unwavering we are. We are so confident in what we believe in, and we understand that it's not up for grabs. There's no place nor time for negotiation, for debates. We understand that our core ideals cannot and mustn't be sacrificed nor compromised. This is something that I actually think adults, you need to learn from us. Be proud of what you believe in. Be proud of what is right and believe in it with all that you have. Fight for it with all that you got. On the left, as a collective, we need to be serious about consolidating, about centralizing, about having a united front, because that is the only way we're going to get through this together. One great individual is great, but two will always be greater. We must focus and heed the salience of accumulating government power, both inside and outside of our government. We must be together, we must fight, and we mustn't cower down. We mustn't go with what is normal, what we're used to, what we're comfortable with. We only have a couple of chances to get this right. We are fighting for the very remnant of our humanity, and it is up to us to take back our own power. Not that someone just randomly took it from us, but we voluntarily gave it away. Please fight. If you believe in what a people's party could be, if you believe in what a major third party in this nation could be, then that should be the end of discussion. Fight for it. Believe in it. Have hope. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope you stay safe. I hope you stay organizing.
Here comes the People's Party.